Let me see if I have any other questions here. I've got somebody said, how can I transition from a SOC or a security operating center? I imagine that you mean an analyst, like a SOC analyst, to a GRC. And for those who don't know, a SOC is usually it's like a central command for an organization. Usually it's in medium to large size organizations where they're monitoring all the traffic and all the security features of the organization. They're monitoring they're looking at the logs of the entire organization and doing what's called continuous monitoring in near real time. And then they're a part of the incident response team. If they see an incident, sometimes they are this incident response team, but they're detecting security incidents or abnormal behavior, and then they're reporting it. And whereas GRC is stuff that mostly we're talking about, doing the documentation, looking at the big picture of the organization, doing policies, doing meetings to make sure that everything is going like it's supposed to. So the question is, how do you transition from being a SOC analyst to GRC? And I would say, just real quick, a SOC analyst could be a real good pivot point into GRC, because as a SOC analyst, there's certain things that you need to know that technically are going to prepare you for looking at the big picture. First of all, you are looking at the big picture. You're looking at all the logs, depending on how they did the SIEM. You're looking at all the logs in the organization, how many security incidents, certain things that are happening in the organization. You are a part of the governance, risk, and compliance. But now you want to get into the documentation side. Maybe you want to level up, make more money or whatever. Start looking at policies. Start looking at the documentation piece. Start being a part of the work instruction. If you guys have like a work instruction or a standard operating procedure, start helping with that. So, Will, what would you say to that
Yeah,
question?
I 100% agree with what you said, Bruce. I think that just thinking what the next step is, because I think on the SOC analyst side, you're used to reporting, and a lot of roles, especially if you're in a junior level role where you're not direct customer facing, usually just you're reporting that a notification or alert that you've either manually sent out or you got some sort of automation that's sending out to whoever's on that alert notification list. And that's it. And you're moving on to the next thing. Okay, I report it, and then you might do a follow-up call if that organization is mature enough to have, okay, if it's a higher critical, we need a phone call on top of that email or notification to an app or something like that. But just thinking, what's the next step? So now you've either sent that alert notification out, put yourself on the other side of receiving that alert. What do you do next? A lot of that is those alerts will be, hey, you got some sort of indicator or compromise, and then it's showing that there's this vulnerability that's out there, or you're seeing a indication that there's a configuration that has a known exploited vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're on the other end of that, receiving that alert, then now your job as maybe the system administrator is to go and then patch that system, right? Or validate that alert is legit and isn't a false positive. But then, okay, yeah, I do see that we don't have that configuration. We haven't patched. Maybe it's Thursday, or maybe it's the third Thursday of the month, and we haven't gotten around to patch Tuesday or whatever the next patch cycle. Right. Maybe it's pulling that in a little ahead of time, doing a service outage, and then trying to schedule that outage, doing some change management, configuration management, and then getting that request approved, and then getting that implemented as an emergency fix. So thinking what that next step is. The other side of it too is when you do an alert, there's also, as part of like incident response, a lot of that is, hey, who am I then notify? If I get the alert as a system administrator, am I keeping this to myself, or do I need to escalate this to somebody else? And so thinking of who we're going to escalate that to. Also, so like we talked about vulnerability management, we talked about a communication plan, a communication strategy, and an escalation strategy as part of incident response. So you might go from SOC analyst to DFIR, like what Bruce mentioned before, to where you're actually going in. Not only did you alert and monitor on it, now you're going in and you're actually going to investigate and see it. How widespread is this indicator or compromise? Is it just one system, or is this just the start of things where I need to start shutting things down and contain this incident and isolate that workstation, and then do an investigation to see if other similar processes are happening on other workstations where the payload just hasn't been activated yet. Maybe DFIR, and then from a DFIR's perspective, that might be a way to do GRC as well, because you're able to manage an incident because all the different areas and all the different phases and what needs to happen. Because if you're in a GRC role, sometimes you might be the security manager, where you have to do all the communication with the other stakeholders. So not only are you then managing what your IT team is doing, but I need to contact maybe my cyber insurance policy. I need to contact my legal team. I need to contact the C-suite to let them know, okay, we might need to start talking to our public affairs, public relations to let them know that there may be the potential of a security incident that is happening right now that we are investigating. And when we get a little bit more information, we'll let you. But these third parties, these customers that we might have, it might be impacting them. So we might want to give them a heads up on letting them know. So just thinking up from a communication perspective, all the different departments, all the different stakeholders that need to understand what is going on based off of what you're alerting on. That's a good way to start looking at transitioning.
Excellent. And they say they're working for 3 years in cyber, 6 in IT. And you said that you have a security plus and an OSCP, which is fire. That's great. That's an awesome move. So what Will is saying, to piggyback on what he's saying, is you got to start looking at the bigger picture. Like right now, your whack-a-mole time. You're looking at the logs and saying, okay, I'm looking for that mole we're gonna whack. Like you got to start looking at the bigger picture. And you can do, I don't know, pen testing. You could do cybersecurity consulting, bigger picture. Now you're looking at the whole organization. How can I penetrate this organization? Like those kinds of roles where you're looking at a bigger scope for the organization is what I would do. If I was in your position, that's what I would do. Start looking for those types of positions. And you say you have 3 years in cyber. So right now you're probably in a stage where you're like, man, I don't know if I want to do that. I've been in SOC analyst. I'm comfortable with this role. You got to start thinking about, I'm going to have to communicate with people. I'm going to have to articulate exactly what I can do for this organization. You're going to have to break yourself out of that comfort zone. And that's where the bigger money is going to start coming in. It's scary to do at first, but you got to believe in yourself. You got an OSCP. You know how many people have that? Not many. Not many. That shows a level of skill that a lot of people don't have. That's not just a written exam. That's a practical hacking.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken,
Oh
that's a
yeah.
practical. You have to
Yeah.
hack some shit in
Yeah.
order to
You
do
gotta
that.
you gotta hack in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like you have a level of skill that you got to believe in yourself to make that next step and be a consultant. Like those jobs are out there. Just you putting OSCP and your experience level on there is going to open up a whole bunch of roles, but you've got to speak to what you can do for the organization. So that's what I would advise you to do.